Forget paying for templates and struggling to build n8n automations purely from scratch. I just used Manus AI to generate multiple ready-to-use n8n workflows in bulk. All at once, no coding, no complex setups, and most importantly, no wasted hours just trying to understand where to get started. I simply send a prompt, run a few errands in the meantime, and then I come back to a folder filled of automations that are ready to import, along with documentation on exactly how they work. It honestly feels like cheating, and in this video, I'm going to show you how you can do it too. If you have a laundry list of automations you've just been itching to get started, you're going to love this video. Let's dive right in. So if you don't even know what Manus is, I don't blame you. There's literally thousands of tools out there, but Manus is basically Claude Unchained, hooked up to a ultra version of deep research, where it doesn't just go and do deep research, but it goes and actually executes different workflows. It can create files. It can even create entire websites and web apps, kind of like Lovable and Bolt, all from a single prompt. Now, while this has a very ChatGPT-esque interface, it is definitely different. So you have two main modes in Manus. One is called standard mode, where it uses standard reasoning, and one is called high effort mode. Now, for standard, the price isn't too crazy. So if we go to the profile here, we go to credits, and go to change plan, you'll see there's two plans. There's one called Manus Starter and one called Manus Pro. Now the Manus Starter gives you access to standard, and honestly for this amount of credits, they run very quickly. If you have a very complex prompt, you could use anywhere from 500 to 1,000 credits all at once. But if you want access to the high effort mode, which is really where the power of today's demo is going to come from, it's going to cost you an eye-watering $199 per month. So for me, I was able to justify it because a couple of the business owners in my paid community really wanted me to do some use cases. But in your case, depending on this video, you might want to make your decision very carefully. With that being said, in terms of effectiveness, all of this technology is only as good as your best prompt. If you need some inspiration on the different types of prompts you can actually employ, you can go down to the featured section and click on something like deeply analyze stocks, and it will show you a sample of what this prompt will look like, as well as the possible result if you were to execute it. Now, obviously knowing me, my theme for this video was imagining myself as a business owner from different areas and industries. So my first example was a massage therapist. And that's because I went to see a massage therapist and they told me, have you heard of ChatGPT, Mark? And I'm like, yeah, I have heard of it. And then we started talking about automations, and then basically she said, I wish that I could kind of sit down for a whole weekend and just crank out 10 different n8n automations and really streamline my business. So that inspired this following prompt here, which is a bit meaty. So we'll take a closer look at this prompt by just going to here, clicking copy. I'll open a new Google Doc right here, and then we'll just click this, paste it. And then this is pretty much how it reads. And I'll read it with you the first time just because the remaining examples will all be very similar. So it reads the following. You are an n8n workflow automation specialist deeply familiar with massage therapy business operations. Your task is to create 10 comprehensive workflows using n8n, automating an entire massage therapy practice from lead gen through post-appointment follow-up. If we go down here, we give some business context. So Google Calendar, Google Sheets, Gmail, social media. We basically give it an idea of the types of tools we're using, and then we go through the goals. So in this case, automate repetitive tasks, enhance client experience, and increase bookings and retention. If we scroll down a bit more, you'll see the deliverables, and this is a very important section that I noticed is powerful, not just with normal deep research, but especially with Manus AI, is telling it exactly what your expectations are. Because sometimes, even though it goes the next 5 or 6 steps, it gets way ahead of itself and it doesn't focus on the primary use case itself. So in this case, I say detailed workflow explanation file. So with every single automation we crank out, I want to see exactly what that automation entails and what it does. Next is complete and validated JSON workflow. And then we have a setup credential instruction file. And then we go through the different required workflows. Now, if you think I sat down and wrote this myself, you are severely wrong. I went to ChatGPT, asked it to act as a prompt engineer, told it that I'm using some AI agent that's really good at deep research, and then it came up with this, and I told it, let's create some use cases, let's say 10 workflows, that would be super helpful for a massage therapy clinic. And it came up with lead capture and qualification system, appointment scheduling automation, appointment reminder sequence, client intake form processing, post-appointment follow-up, inactive client re-engagement, therapist schedule management, marketing campaign automation. This one was interesting. Client birthday and anniversary recognition. And the last one was some form of business analytics automation. And then again, in the requirements section here, we just say all workflows must adhere to current n8n best practices, optimize for performance, stability, and include error handling measures. And the last two bullets really just focus on, again, making sure that the files are coherent and any of the modules we're using, let's say from Google Sheets, are written in a way that is up to date. So with that said, the reason why I'm not running this live is just because on high effort mode, which is again, very expensive to run in terms of credits, probably around 1,000 credits. If we go into my credit history here, just to verify, you'll see we're all across the gamut. We have 828, 979, 1083, etc. So I had to be very particular with my prompting. And then once we basically feed it this very long prompt, it'll just say, I've received your message with the attached file. It reads it, it goes through it. It can come up with a plan and have you approve it if you want. In this case, I just let it go hog wild on its own. In this case, it just confirms, says, for each workflow, I'll provide a detailed explanation file, a complete and validated JSON workflow, and then a setup and credential instructions. It then goes on for the next around 40 to 50 minutes, researching n8n, reading the docs, going through everything, starting to create all these fundamental files, basically a to-do list that it uses for itself to keep track of what's happening. And as it goes through, it starts to look at different massage companies to draw inspiration. It does a lot of browsing. So imagine if Deep Research and ChatGPT Operator had a baby, or Claude Search and Anthropic Computer Use had a baby. This is kind of what's happening here behind the scenes. It's actually taking action, it's refining its work, and it's taking quite a bit of time and credits in the process. But after all this, it says, I've completed the design for all n8n workflows for your massage therapy business. And then I go through here, and typically, just because I've been used to working with, let's say, ChatGPT Deep Research, I wasn't expecting the best results. But in this case, it just double checks and asks me, do you want me to output all the JSON files in a way that you can just download and import? And I say yes. And then you can see here, it creates each and every JSON file for n8n. And you can see these are very meaty. So unlike my video that a lot of you seem to like about Claude and using a study guide, I had to do all this work to kind of pseudo fine-tune Claude, and we could only crank out one workflow at a time. In this space, we could do 9, 10, I was able to do up to 15. Now, are all of them perfect? Will they import perfectly? Are all of the nodes going to be perfect? No. But a lot of them not only will be perfect, but some of them will be very complex and bespoke. So instead of just yapping, let's just show you. So we get this zip file at the very end, and you can download this zip file, and you'll get something like this. So in this case, we can double click on massage therapy. It'll open this up, and you have here a README file. All of this was done, by the way, by the AI. I didn't do anything other than the prompt. And then in the README file, it'll walk you through, if I zoom in a bit here, exactly what is in the folder. So you can see workflow JSON files, workflow documentation, setup instructions. It walks through again a summary of all the workflows included and exactly how you can get started. So review the instructions, import the JSON files in your n8n instance, and then basically set it up. So if we go into workflows, you'll see we have one folder per type of workflow. So let's go into appointment scheduling. We'll double click into here. We'll click into workflow explanation. And this goes through exactly what's happening in the automation step by step. So first you have a client booking request, you have a webhook node, and then you validate and format booking data. This is the function node. And then it goes through every single node it used and why with its rationale. So even if you're just starting your n8n journey, this helps you not only go from 0 to 1 in some cases, but it also tells you why it's doing what it's doing. So with that, let's actually import this JSON here. That being said, we can double click this file now, do Command A, copy it, just click on the canvas, paste, and then I'll use the little brush here to organize everything. And you'll see we don't have just a very basic workflow. We have something that's waiting for a webhook, validates and formats the booking, stores a client database in Google Sheets, checks your calendar availability, comes up whether or not there's this time slot available. If yes, then it goes down one flow. Otherwise, it'll send alternatives. And it checks, are they an existing client? And just to pause here, The cool thing to me is it not only understands how to do the n8n JSON, which I've shown you in other videos, but it has some business logic. It's done research to see what would be a thoughtful automation for this specific industry. And that's why you can see the nodes here are labeled in a way that's very specific to this kind of practice. And then you basically have a confirmation email, and then you have an email, notify therapist, which I found super cool. And if we take another workflow, just so we're not pigeonholing the ones that went well, let's do inactive client reactivation. So I'll open this up, I'll copy this, I'll paste it here, and then you'll see this one is a lot beefier. So this one starts right here at weekly inactive client check some client database in Google Sheets, some more Google Sheets action, and now we get to a router. And then this router, you'll see how specific and bespoke it is to massage therapy. So either create service-focused content for the client, create wellness-focused content, create value-focused, or create personal content. So it's even being thoughtful at the business level, taking into consideration exactly what this business does. And you can see this keeps going, right? So next we have send initial re-engagement campaign, record re-engagement attempt, wait for follow-up. So this to me, again, one of those small nerdy wow moments. Like, it's thoughtful enough to know you should probably not shoot them an email one day after the other. Next, check for response. No response yet. If true, send a follow-up. Follow-up sent. Wait for final attempt. Check final response. Still no response. Send final attempt. Then record final attempt. And then it created another sub workflow here. If I zoom out right here. This one says re-engagement booking webhook, and then it starts to create a separate flow that could be relevant, but it's the idea that unlike a lot of the things I've even shown on this channel thus far, the nodes are not only intact, but things have been thoughtfully put together. You didn't necessarily have to say, I want this and that and create it. It's doing all that for you. So on the scale of agentic, which I never think is a binary term, this is much more on that agentic scale. And just to show one more use case before we close this specific example up, we'll go back into here. Let's pick something like client birthday. What does that look like? We'll take that, copy, paste, and then we'll do the brush. You'll see here, in this case, it's weekly special date check. Back to the database stuff, should it send a message? And then depending on the communication preference of the client, either they get an email greeting or an SMS greeting. And to me, this was cool because if you open this up, it is trying to send something towards Twilio, which is a common provider for SMS, at least in North America. In this case, record message sent, and then record special offer. So now what if this was a fluke and it just worked by accident? Totally fair assessment. So let's go into another example. Another thing I tried was venture capital, so a completely different industry. So again, I won't go over the prompt in depth. You'll have access to the prompt, all the resources, everything as usual in the description below as the very first link. But if we take a look here, you'll see you are an expert in n8n workflow automation. In this case, we're just saying deep familiarity with VC operations, venture capital. Once again, we asked for 10 comprehensive workflows. We give it an example of the kind of tools we're using. This time I tried to throw a few curveballs like Slack, DocuSign, and we went through the priorities again. I basically got ChatGPT to come up with 10 new use cases that I'd want to make automations for, and we had those same requirements. Now, did this work on high effort mode perfect the first time? It did not. The JSONs all had property value errors, all of them. So if we go to here, when it says completed, I basically humbled it that I said we want fully fledged JSON file for each automation that is compliant with the latest version so we can seamlessly import it. What happened here is it did output quite a few files and a lot of them were JSONs, but the JSONs, one, did not import, and two, it focused a lot purely just on the research and not on my core goal, which is just the output of the JSON. So we humbled it with another instruction. It took another, say, 15 minutes, and then it came back with the folder that I showed you before, where we get this zip file. If we open this zip file and go back to here, and we go back to venture capital, all right, open this up, open final package, and then workflows. Let's choose something random. Let's say deal sourcing, okay? And let's choose we'll copy, paste, put it in here, clean her up. And this time we got something different. So daily LinkedIn check. So it looks for LinkedIn posts. And another trigger are like is a form, perhaps like a lead form for applying for their venture capital firm for funding, some form of website form trigger. So interesting that it was also thoughtful enough to think of multiple different input forms. Then it gets routed by source, data standardized. It tries to create some CRM contact. Not sure of the CRM here, but it assumed one, and then it routes by score. So I think it's trying to lead score, and then sends some form of Slack notification. So this one isn't too crazy in terms of what it's doing, but if you delete this and go to another one, let's go to something like investment. Let's go due diligence, actually. That would be an interesting one. Let's do due diligence, copy this. I'm looking for one that doesn't work, just so I can prove it doesn't. But this one looks like a behemoth. So you can see we have a due diligence trigger, and then it goes through some folders, prepares some subfolders, and then based on what it finds, it schedules a meeting, and then sends a Slack message, creates a checklist file. You have all kinds of things going in here. And if anything, what's cool is, even if you don't take this and use this to build the end product you're looking for, this will give you a lot of inspiration on what you could go for. So imagine you're giving your own company a mini AI audit on what you can or can't do depending on all the tasks you're looking for. This might be worth it to help really inspire and kickstart all of this rumination in a very simple way. So let's take one more example from this VC world. Let's go back and let's do something like events management. So you can see here, we have a flaw. We don't have anything in events management. So imperfect. Let's do document signature. Okay, let's copy that, paste. All right, do we got an automation here? All right, so we have some form of document signature request, process the document, log it somewhere. Does the document have a URL? Interesting. If so, download the document and then save the document from the URL, prepare for signature. Otherwise, does it have a template ID or has document content? Not sure about the criteria here, but again, interesting. And it looks like it has some more sub pieces below, but here's an example of some of the imperfections. We have some random nodes here that aren't necessarily associated with the rest of the automation, but there's a lot going on. So weekly document report, we got send a reminder notification. It didn't obviously know that I don't think there's a native DocuSign integration in n8n, so this should have been something like an HTTP request. But the goal is not perfection, especially with language models. The goal is just progress faster and more efficiently. So if we close this out, I'm just going to answer a possible question in your head right now. So if we take another use case, but we didn't feel like paying the eye-watering $200, how good are the results? So same story with the standard mode. I told it some feedback because the JSONs originally were not in the right format. This took around 45 to 50 minutes. And then if we go into the actual automation, so let's go into standard mode for the coaching automations. And this is for a standard coaching business. I wasn't very specific. So let's go to workflows. In this case, I said, make me 5 that are client management related and give me 5 that are content creation related. And what I noticed is it struggled with content creation. So let's say something like Facebook, all right? If we take this and we go back into n8n, you'll see there's quite a few nodes here that are imperfect. Now, I noticed that this happened more often with standard mode, and I rarely found other sub workflows that I kind of thought of or brainstormed on. If we take another example here and we go to client management, these typically were better. So if I take something like a client post-session feedback automation, and we copy this, all right, and we clean her up. All right, so this one looks like it's pretty intact. I noticed with very specific platforms like Facebook, Instagram, it would struggle. Twitter was actually decent. But in this case, you'll see it is coherent, even on standard mode. So it's not just possible on the most expensive plan. You can also do it here. I just found that in terms of consistency, I found more consistency on, obviously, the extra strength thinking. And here's one more. This one seems to be intact as well. And it's, again, a fairly beefy automation, especially if we just organize it here. We have 2 scheduled triggers. It defaults a lot to Google Sheets, but obviously I told it that in its instructions. If this was to be something else, you can just switch that. It was good at also conceptualizing things like loops. So right now it's looping through some sheets, looking to see if all clients have been processed, and it was able to properly render the OpenAI module, again, without having to use that extra strength mode. You also get a time savings rather, where instead of 50 minutes for extra strength, it takes around 20 to 25 minutes for standard. So definitely an option as well. Now, if we take the exact same approach, exact same prompt, but use standard mode, let's take the second folder here, and let's go to coaching, hi, and then fixed. And we take one of these, let's say fixed LinkedIn. In general, they were more intact, but you'll get these problems once in a while, even on high mode, or extra strength mode, which is property value error. And then if we pull another one here, let's see if we get the same error. Boom. Okay, so that's telling me the same thing, even though this was the fixed version of the workflows on high mode. And then we'll try one more. Let me just double check. Let's try this one. All right, so in this case, standard was better than high mode. So if I was trying this out in your use case, I would try this on standard mode primarily and see how far you can take it just on standard mode. It will definitely eat tokens, but you're not going to be paying $200 a month. But if you want to fast track and see how far you could actually push it and see if you can get quote unquote lucky, like our first use case with the massage therapy example, that's where you might want to be a bit more adventurous and see what's possible. And that's pretty much it. So if this gets you incrementally closer to your dream of headache-free n8n automations, or the fantasy of just asking it to take into account your business and cranking out 10, 15 automation drafts to really get things rolling, then let me know down in the comments below. Helps the video a lot, helps the channel a lot, so I'd really appreciate it. And if you want to see all the other experiments I've been doing with Manus, this is something I'm doing for my exclusive paid community, so check that out in the second link in the description below. I'll see you next time.